How can you massively scale your business through digital marketing? What's the real difference between companies that are just doing all right and ones that have a huge footprint across the internet? That's what I'm going to dive into here. First off, I want to go into what is scaling. Scaling is a feedback loop, tapping into a highly interested audience, essentially using Google Ads to bring in new clients who are searching for your specific services. And then the profit from those new clients is then used to expand the advertising budget for the next month, and then the next month, and the next month. And as the loop continues, it grows larger and larger. So it can rapidly increase your business revenue. So only a business with a well-developed and fully built marketing strategy can say, when I spend more on ads, I will, without a doubt, get more clients and profit. So you want to get into scaling, so let's discuss how to get to that point as quickly as possible. Here's what I'll cover today: who I made this for and why, common mistakes that most businesses make when it comes to digital advertising, and companies that have turned it around, what they specifically did, redefining your business mindset, and what marketing agencies don't want you to know. And that will lead into the fastest way to change things for the better. So who is this for? Business owners that are or about to be spending money on marketing above 5 figures a month. So generally, companies that are in the $10,000 to $30,000, $40,000 a month advertising budget can see rapid changes because that is enough money to rapidly scale, but also have enough data in your account to make some changes. And then I've also worked with companies that are spending 6 figures a month, and that can have huge implications over your reach across the entire world and the savings and efficiency that your account can actually produce. But you don't have to be at the 6-figure mark. This is also for businesses that have achieved a high level of stability and can handle rapid growth. So a lot of traffic incoming into your website, as well as a sales team, business solutions that can handle rapid growth with a large amount of new leads, and are ready to move from do-it-yourself or having an intern or secretary, or just a lower level employee manage your advertising. Because there's a certain sweet spot between do-it-yourself and then the big marketing agencies that are promising the all-in-one solutions. They say, we'll do SEO, we'll do your website, we'll do your email marketing, and we'll also do your paid advertising, Facebook, Instagram, and Google Ads. Because usually you're going to have to pay a lot just for the hopes of some jack of all trades that is willing to spread themselves thin and do all those things just sort of at a medium level. So how do most businesses do digital marketing? Well, they normally hire someone with very little knowledge or experience simply because they are cheaper. So this would be, recent college grads, people that had been interns or, assistants in another company, perhaps, and they're trying to work themselves up, and you're giving them sort of a low-level position. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, obviously. I did that. Everybody had to, climb up the ladder. But you don't want a huge marketing budget and your business to depend on, sort of a recent college grad with very little experience necessarily. There is that sweet spot between how much you should actually pay to hire somebody and the actual budget you are running. So most likely, if you are spending 5 to 6 figures a month, especially the companies in the 5-figure a month range, I would hope that you are phasing out of this, or at least planning on it. Or it is CEOs or business managers, business owners, entrepreneurs that try to manage the advertising themselves when that is not their specialty. People who are running their own companies that have a very specific service, and then they also, on top of all of their business administration and financing and hiring and corporate culture setup, they have to also say, okay, well, let me learn some Facebook ads, let me learn some Google ads. That will get you either poor results just because you're so time poor and you're spread so thin, and you have much better ways to focus your time and much more important things for you to handle, that the results will be much poorer than you really deserve, and you'll either ignore it or just kind of give up. Or another, sort of like the final phase is overpaying a huge agency that is churning through young employees and spends most of their time making fancy looking reports. I know this because I've been part of different agencies, and I was one of the young employees. And you're most likely paying an agency a huge amount of money compared to the actual amount of time they put onto your account, because they're going to put the lower level people on the account, and then the higher level people will just be there for the presentation, and they just kind of spend most of their time making fancy looking PowerPoints. So that's why this presentation is very straightforward. It's very simple, nothing too fancy about it, because I just want to get to the actual facts. And if you are easily impressed by fancy looking graphics and vanity metrics, then that's what those agencies are counting on. And that's what they're counting on to charge you a massive amount of money. So what is the harsh truth for most small businesses? They're living in uncertainty. They're unsure of what is or is not helping their marketing. They're getting leads and traffic to the website from all these different sources, referrals, and people just searching it organically, and as well as their social advertising and just general social media and email marketing, that they're not exactly sure which avenue is really helping their revenue. And they're saying, oh, well, it all helps, right? It all helps. But without knowing specifically what is driving the most growth, then you can't really scale it up. You have to really know these numbers. So marketing becomes just an added stress and is often frustrating. So it's avoided. And I can relate to this because as a small business owner and working with multiple small businesses, we all like to focus on what our expertise is. I don't know the most about taxes and financial corporate setups and administration. I just know about paid advertising and certain other specific skills that I really like. So a lot of the tax stuff and the corporate setup, I outsource. And when I wasn't outsourcing it, it was stressful and frustrating, and I was avoiding it. So ask yourself, is that any sort of way to predictably scale your business? Just stress and frustration and unknowing. So if you are a business owner looking for a predictable way to generate a high level of website signups and leads and explode your business to the 7-figure level and above, then you're definitely in the right place. And that's who this is for. If you are a smaller company or you have an idea for a startup and you haven't actually launched anything, or you're just doing, a few $1,000s in advertising a month, this is really not for you. This is for more established companies that are really ready to take off. So given all those frustrations and worries, how have companies turned this around? So going from frustration to massive growth. So here's some past clients, and it ranges from CEOs, CMOs, marketers, strategists, and company owners. And these are people who have seen how much a different strategy and a different perspective on how to manage their advertising can massively change how their business trajectory goes. So this is a biotech startup. They sort of stalled out with their leads. They had a different consultant, contractor, who was managing their Facebook ads, and it was very poor targeting. and that wasn't really using all the technology that Facebook allows, things like audience lists and lookalike audiences and other technical things that you don't really have to worry about. Just know that it matters a lot how you structure your ad accounts. So this consultant had sort of done like a mediocre job, but it wasn't getting them the results they wanted. Once they handed it over to me, they quickly saw a massive amount of results. So hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes per month. And right when I took it over, it was getting around $36,000 a month. And now we're having days where an individual investor will put in $20,000, $50,000, even $100,000 from a single person. And that's not including all of the other investments throughout that day and throughout that month. So just think about those changes and think about how important it is to have somebody manage it correctly, because it was only slight changes from their point of view. Just here, let's just use this person instead of more of an amateur who's possibly cheaper, and the results are so massive that the actual cost in hiring somebody is just it's almost negligible because you're getting so much return. So this was a jewelry store. It's a nationwide brand. And, I'm not going to go into details just for confidentiality, but it's a very competitive market, and they were going up against other huge national brands with very deep pockets. And they were using Google Ads, and it was a bit complicated for them and time consuming, but they were receiving results, right? They were getting people on their website to find their locations, and that was their goal. So, they were getting around 700 people per month on their website to go and find a physical location. And you might think, well, they're getting results. They're making a profit. That's great for them. Why worry about it? Why change around how it needs to be structured or get a second opinion on how it's run? Well, they're spending around $30,000 a month. And once I managed it and took it over, it essentially tripled the amount of people per month going to find their locations. So it's essentially the same ad spend, but it's just much more efficient. And once they went from having one person manage it to another, the differences are huge. So it matters so much on the experience level and the technical ability of the person you are having manage it. So how much does 2,000 people coming in to buy diamonds and jewelry make you? The amount of return is so massive that, like I was saying before, the amount to hire somebody or not is negligible. At that point, you are really thinking about rapid growth and really building your company. Okay, so this is just one example of enterprise software. I've worked with a lot of enterprise companies, very large corporations that have complex ad accounts that are really advertising all over the entire world and have different budgets for Europe versus Asia and the US and South America. And it can be very complex. So here's the problem. With really complex ad accounts, the previous marketing team, even though the team was qualified on paper and was very skilled on paper, if you had talked to them, they knew what they were talking about. But it was so big and complex that they could simply pass off very general information to the higher ups, right? They knew that no one they worked with would or even could look into the details. So they left it pretty stagnant. And it's very common. I'm not going to name any names, but so many corporations are run like this because, they sort of hire their friends and their buddies, and they don't want to rock the boat and say, hey, this department's not doing that well, or it could be way better. And they sort of let things grow stagnant, and they just show off some metrics to the higher ups, and the higher ups are like, okay, well, you guys are doing what you're doing. That's what we paid you for. And not knowing the full potential of what could happen. So as an outsider, I brought a completely different approach and turned the account around. And they went from worrying about their ads to, worrying if they should even just cut off their advertising, and, not even knowing what to do. Originally, they were just looking for a little bit of help, to now just massive amounts of growth and growing their budgets to that 6-figure mark, because they're seeing such a return on their investment. And that's really what you want. You want different experts looking at what you're doing or what your team is doing, so that your account can really grow and thrive, right? Because even if they are experienced and have been working on it, you don't really know exactly what they're doing most of the time. And they can easily sort of pass off mediocre results. And I've seen it'd be hard to believe some of these stories, but billion-dollar corporations spending hundreds of thousands of dollars per month, and it's just pointless. They're just essentially giving money to Google and to Facebook, and that's how Google and Facebook are worth so much money. So many companies just sending them money without even worrying about their return, because they're so big. They're like, okay, well, we're a massive corporation. We're too big to fail, essentially. But your advertising spend isn't nearly as efficient or as useful as it could be, and it could really grow the company. And I've seen that from experience. So the top categories of people I work with are, sort of the larger enterprise companies that need lead generation. Leads are worth a huge amount to them, and their campaigns are very complex and need, huge amount of assistance. But you'd be surprised at how large accounts can be and still be managed by one person or a consultant or just a few people. And instead of having these huge teams, a lot of companies have realized, we just need someone who actually knows what's going on and manage it correctly, instead of 10 people just sort of analyzing it and just kind of going back and forth between each other. Then there's startups. I've worked with different startups, and when you need a huge burst of marketing to raise investments or drive traffic to a new offer, I've helped companies really hit the different countries that they need to hit, or the different audiences, and start scaling that up, sort of like that biotech company. And there's a few others where the intense burst has to be used very carefully, because you only have so much budget, and it has to really drive a huge amount of investment, as much as possible, so you can hit the next round or get different investments from banks or whatever it is you're doing. That's a very, very special time. Then there are in-store visits. I've worked with different types of high-end locations where they need people to come into their physical locations. That would be places like jewelry chains, plastic surgeons, orthodontists. Those are very high-value leads, and the return can be very high on these leads. So the leads are worth a lot. And once you're able to actually scale and put the profit from the leads that you got that month into the next month and put more into advertising, you can rapidly scale, because then you're just focusing on the very high value clients, instead of just people who are just asking questions or whatever it is. And you're able to get a huge return rapidly. So if this is you and you need help, just think about it. If this applies to you, then you can take action anytime during this video. You can apply right now, and we can talk and see if you fit the criteria, and really develop a strategy for you. Right? So I'm going to expand on all these topics that I mentioned in what I'm covering today in the presentation. But that is the gist of it. If you know already what you need, then you can take action anytime. So I invite you to do that. Otherwise, you can stay and watch the rest of the presentation. So the two different types of business mindsets that I have seen from all these different companies is it's really a business mindset. So there are people who are scaling their business and people who just don't even bother, and what we can do to start fixing that. So businesses are either growing or they are dying. That's a very common saying, and I'm sure you found that is true. So ultimately, there will be companies that are dabblers. There are companies who will just sort of, hey, we need someone to do marketing, so let's just hire somebody and let's just kind of just have it done by an intern or a college grad or our social media person, just have them maybe take a class or just have them manage it. And they're not really too focused on that because they've got a business to run. So they're just sort of dabbling in the digital marketing space. But then there are builders. Builders have a real strategy and are actively going out to grow. So the dabblers are people who make some money from their marketing sometimes, but no profit most of the time. So they're putting a lot of effort into it, but their returns are just too little, and they usually just don't actually know what their return on investment is for that much work and effort and for that much spend. And it's very, very common. You don't have to feel bad if this is your situation, because a lot of companies are growing very quickly. So they just have to get a little bit of it managed at different points, and it's just sort of slapped together. But builders, they're growing their business. So they're making more and more money, building wealth, really building a company war chest and spending less time doing it. So after working directly with dozens of companies and studying this industry for years, I've realized that the builders have two things present in their businesses that the dabblers do not. So a predictable clients system. So targeting customers who are ready to buy, not just ones that want to visit the website and just sort of maybe like your Facebook posts, but actual purchasers. That is a huge difference. So I've worked with 5-figure a month ad budgets focused on a real return on investment and basing the scaling strategy on proven results, actual data, and not just guesswork. So the truth is that if you have both of these things present in your business, both the targeting and the real budget that is scaled based on data, then you are very easily and predictably going to be able to scale your business based off of your digital marketing. So that's a huge difference, right? People going through the motions and people who have a real strong marketing strategy. And you see that every day. There's people who are just trying to make it through their day. They kind of answer some emails, they do what work they have to do, and they don't really have any sort of strong life strategy or business strategy. And they're just sort of keeping things afloat. And they're doing a good job, but they're not really able to break out of that. They're plateauing. So, what I see is a lot of people, as in a lot of small businesses, will have a social media manager. This can be internal or outsourced to somebody, and they just sort of have that person or their office assistant or their email marketer or someone like a recent college grad handle all their digital marketing, which really limits them. So I'm not saying anything is bad about your social media person or your office assistant, but do you really expect your office assistant or social media manager to build advanced Google ad campaigns? But what are you supposed to do if you are at that sort of medium level? How can you go from, getting a sort of a do-it-yourself setup all the way to the huge advertising spend? Most people sort of plateau somewhere in the middle. So I'm not talking about posting on your social media or sending out your newsletter, but building real targeted ad campaigns. And you might think, oh, well, I'd have to get to the point where I'm hiring this massive marketing agency. So again, nothing is wrong with your team. that I know of. I'm not saying anything is bad about that. I'm not saying anything is bad about recent college grads. I worked myself up as well, and everyone has to start somewhere. I'm only saying that paid advertising is an extremely specific skill and not a part-time task for a generalized assistant or a social media manager, or especially the CEO or the people running the business that have way more important things to do and are spread extremely thin actually managing the business. So I just want to say, if you think it's expensive to hire a professional, just wait until you hire an amateur, because the amateurs will likely either inefficiently spend in your account or waste money and slow down your company's growth by a huge amount before you even realize it, and that can lead to a lot of stagnation. So, I really want you to think about that. You're going to slow down your company's growth and not hit where you want to go because you're just sort of having it handled by just, whoever you can get that's relatively affordable. That's really not a good strategy. So unless you have hired a professional marketer for your office, you are most likely leaving money and clients and leads and traffic on the table. So what is a professional marketer? If you're hiring somebody internal, they're probably demanding $70,000 to $80,000 minimum in salary, and they have the experience to require that much because they're going to be in demand, believe me. So that simply does not make sense for companies spending around that much on their ad budget. So if you're spending, let's say, $30,000 a month, are you really going to spend $80,000? And that's just for one person. And you might even need, 3 or 4 people, since they're just going to be like, the average, that's sort of like the average marketer. But are you going to really spend that much money on advertising? If you're spending, let's say, $20,000 a month, if you hire somebody $80,000, there goes a third of your ad spend just on the salary. That's a huge amount. And then that's not even including, of course, this, things like health insurance and 401k and all the benefits and, hiring costs, etc. And if you're larger, you're most likely overpaying a large-scale agency to manage your advertising. So a huge, sort of conglomerate that has just a big warehouse full of, employees, and they're just sort of churning you through. So here's what agencies don't want you to know. And they're usually doing one of two things. So agency scenario one is they get people who are stretched super thin, and that is the agency model. They get low-level employees, recent college grads, and they just throw as many clients as they physically can at them while they're running around just trying to manage it. And they will look at your account every once in a while, right? And that's the agency model, is to just stretch everyone super thin. Anybody who's worked in these very fast-paced environments and those corporate jobs knows what that's like, where you're just spread super, super thin. And, I remember those days. Those can be good days because you're learning a lot, but it usually isn't the best work because there's so much they have to pay attention to from other clients. So they'll usually get kids fresh out of college to do grunt work, and the whole time the kids are learning. I went through the same thing. But you're paying a huge amount to essentially hire low-level people. And then the higher-ups in the agency that are essentially getting most of the salary and most of the credentials are just kind of jumping from call to call just to keep each client happy, while most of the work is just being done by whoever else. And then they just will show you some pretty reports with some nice PowerPoints and that you can share with your team. And you think, okay, well, that's being handled, I suppose. This is a really big agency. So, they made a really nice presentation. That must mean they really took a look at it. Sure, they took a look at it, but I can almost guarantee you they spent more time on that presentation than they did even working on your account. And that's the sad truth. That was very sad to see from the inside. Or in agency scenario 2, they outsource most of the work to India. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with India. been to India, and it's a great place. And I work with people from India through some of these agencies. And it's I'm not saying anything against them, but they're essentially charging you a huge amount just so they can outsource most of the work to another country. And that's really not what you're paying for. So they're sort of selling you this high bill of goods when it's just like most companies being outsourced. And then for their high-end clients, they're clients that are spending the 6 figures a month, and they really need to be conscious of what happens to them, and they really want them to stay on. They hire consultants to look at it every once in a while and to oversee the strategy and do most of the work. And how do I know that? Because I am one of those consultants, right? Agencies will message me and hire me to outsource the actual large-scale account builds and management, while they charge as much as possible for these companies. And then they'll outsource a lot of the work to me for just to look at every once in a while, right? They can't even, they don't want to be able to hire somebody, to look at it a lot, because that would cut into their profit. It's just, hey, look at this every once in a while. We can bill you out so many hours a week, and just take a look at it, make sure it's looking good. And then the rest of the time we'll have our interns and low-level, sort of college grads, make the presentations and talk to them on the phone and keep them happy while they're sort of keeping a huge amount. So that's what I'm saying. The work will be good because it's coming from an actual high-end consultant, but you're overpaying that agency because they're just keeping a huge profit margin but just to handle that transaction. So that's what I'm telling you. So essentially, most business owners are stuck between that do-it-yourself or low-level college grad, and then vastly overpaying for a big agency where you're one client out of 100, and they have to just run around all day between, a dozen different clients each. So that's a huge range, isn't it? Hey, let me do this myself. Let me throw out some ads. Let me just have my assistant do this, and they can sort of manage a low-level ad spend. But then once you start becoming successful, it's, well, what should we do? Where should we go? I don't want to necessarily hire somebody at $80,000 in salary and, have that cut into my ad spend. That could be half your ad spend or a third of your ad spend for the entire year. That's going to slow down your company's growth. But then if you make it past that hump and you actually start getting a huge amount of revenue, it's like, oh, well, I can't even bother looking at it now. Let's just pay this agency, and we'll pay them a huge amount of money to look at it every once in a while, essentially, and outsource it to India. So my mission is to bridge that gap. There's so many companies out there that are between the small do-it-yourself accounts and the in-house marketing teams or the really large-scale agencies. And I help a lot of companies before they need to get to their own internal marketing team, where you have to hire somebody for $80,000. You don't need to spend that much. You really don't most of the time. And I'm bridging that gap so you can take it above the low level without spending a huge amount of money. And it's a win-win for everybody. So it doesn't require to just increase your ad budget like a lot of these agencies will ask you to do. They'll say, oh, you're doing this. And it's the same thing. I've taken clients to, Google headquarters, and we'll work with Google. And what are a lot of the suggestions coming from Google? They'll say, just increase your ad spend. Why don't you, if you're spending this much money over here, why don't you also spend it on, YouTube ads, and spend it on, increase your budgets here by another $20,000 a month. And they're just wanting to grow the account as much as possible, obviously. So it's, hey, just do what you're already doing. Just throw more money at it. What I do is use whatever budget you are using and making it work for you in the smartest way possible, making your account very, very efficient. So most people are just trying to get you to spend a ton more money. And I know this. I'm a small business owner. I have friends who are entrepreneurs and business, business owners as well, coaches, salespeople, LinkedIn messages, Facebook friend requests, emails, sales calls, in-person proposals. Everybody I run into, it seems like, seems just determined to make me spend my money on them. And I work very hard for my money. I know you do as well. And everyone is messaging me, hey, would you like to, hire this and hire that? So I get it. Believe me, I can relate. The truth is you are spending much more on an underperforming account than what you are in having it managed. So if you look at, TV Super Bowl ads, or anybody who's managed advertising will tell you that it doesn't even matter how much the ad costs to make. What the true cost of it is buying that ad space. And that is just the truth. Think about the Super Bowl ads. Those ads can even be like very, very high-end productions, but the cost is nothing. And having it managed and made and everything is nothing compared to the actual ad spend in just getting that spot. And that's the same thing for digital advertising. Having someone manage it is such a small, negligible amount compared to the effect it has on your business and the huge cost of marketing, right? If you're spending, the 5 to 6 figures, then the difference between, I had to hire this person over that person, and this person's slightly more expensive. Well, think about how much that can alter your business. Think about how important it is to go from just managing yourself part-time or having your assistant manage it part-time to having somebody really focus the account and build strategies for it. It's a huge difference. I really want you to think about that. So isn't it about time you got a second opinion on your ad account and what has been going on with it? Have you had someone do a deep dive on what has actually been going on recently, within the last, 3 to 6 months? If you're just having it outsourced, even to other agencies that are doing a pretty good job, most likely you could still benefit from an audit, because as I'm showing you, there's a lot of flaws with all these scenarios. Nothing's perfect. Okay, nothing is in this world that I know of is perfect. So it's always a good idea to have a second opinion, or to have an expert looking about what's going on and what it will take to take you to the next level. So we can talk and get you that audit, and I'll take a look at exactly what has been going on. So the fastest way to change things for the better, and exactly how you can get this predictable system and generate those high ticket clients, is having your advertising account set up strategically and intelligently. You make every advertising dollar count. You might say, well, of course, I'm carefully allotting a certain amount per month, but is the account as efficient as possible? Is it really getting the reach that you need and the return on investment? Not just spending it, not just getting Facebook likes or visits to your website, or some LinkedIn requests. I'm talking about really driving sales. That is the difference. Is this really the case for your business? If you don't know, because it's so complicated and frustrating, is it because you don't want to deal with it, or is it just so technical and a small part of your concern because you're so busy that it's become a blind spot? And that is the case, I know, for me, for certain aspects of my business, and I think for everybody, there's certain blind spots, and we have to be able to admit that. There's something I'm not that good at, so I just kind of focus on what I am an expert at, and there's certain things that I kind of let fall to the wayside, and it's probably holding my business back. All right? I want you to really think about that and be honest with yourself. Are there blind spots in your business? Because if someone's just telling you, hey, your marketing is looking good, it's great, whatever, and showing you a fancy looking report and some vanity metrics like, oh, you got a whole bunch of likes, you got a whole bunch of, you got, more clicks coming to your website. Well, what does that mean? That's really the difference between just a normal marketer person and a professional who's looking at how to really grow the company. Is the mindset and the shift in strategy. I'm not just trying to show you some vanity metrics and show you a nice looking report. I'm really trying to drive a massive amount of growth. And what is driving the most revenue and profit into your company? So business owners are almost always spread super thin, and they have to prioritize the most important tasks: the funding of the company, the management of the company, the future of the company, and they're extremely busy. But don't let that keep you from, sort of taking a look at how you should rapidly grow it. Take a step outside. If you're ignoring your digital marketing or just sort of letting it fall to the wayside, then that's an easy decision. And you should really think about what your needs are and what your actual goal is. Not to just keep on going, but to really grow. So I know this personally, right? You become so busy working in the business, on the business tasks, that you don't look outside and you look at the overall business and work on the whole thing to design it and grow it to the largest size it could be. Right? That's a huge shift, right? Someone who's managing, a software company, they're managing all sorts of developers and teams, and that's going to take up most of their time, as it should. They might be letting other things slide, right? That's definitely a possibility. They don't think about marketing. They're thinking about developers. So their company can still be limited. It happens to, believe me, companies from, worth $1 million to billions. So what does this system look like? Well, it's the right traffic, calling out your ideal client and specifically detailing their interest, demographic, where they're located. This is all stuff I will help you with or just handle for you by looking at your data. All right, but that's a very, very important part of it, is the right traffic. Instead of just trying to get everybody to like your Facebook page or like your Instagram, you're actually looking at what is driving purchases and showing this right audience the solution that your offer is perfect for both you and them. And my specialty is Google search advertising. So people search on Google all day long for solutions. And if your business is a solution to their problems, then it's a win-win-win, all right? You win, they win, Google wins, I win, right? We want it to be a whole ecosystem where everyone is getting exactly what they want. And these are people willing to pay for a solution. And once this builds momentum, among all the strategies, trying not to get too technical here, but the targeting, the keywords, the audience profile, finding out what works, and then use the profits to build the next month's advertising spend. And it's in our both best interest to grow the account as profitable and as large as possible. So the result of executing this correctly, well, you'll have a constant source of high value leads and signups whenever you want them, whenever you're ready to start growing, however much your pipeline can handle and how much you're willing to invest in it. It's whenever you really want it, because Google's going to have people searching for it all day long. And if your solution has a widespread appeal, then you can keep on growing. So instead of, hey, we put in some money and we're getting a certain amount of, leads or purchases this month, well, what if we could pretty much plan it out so we know how much it's going to grow every single month, so we know exactly what to scale it with. And the best part, you'll know down to the dollar and the day how well your marketing efforts are changing your business. So it's not guesswork. It's not just, here, let me sign to somebody, I'm way too busy for this, which you are. But you don't want to just hand it off to your new employee just because they took a marketing class in their undergrad. And you don't want to deal with the stress and uncertainty. You're right. You need to have this handled, and it needs to be handled in the best way possible so you can grow. So you'll have that scalable marketing that is based on data. So data-driven marketing, looking at the actual signups and purchases and the revenue and profit, and using those numbers to grow the account, not just vanity metrics, not just website clicks and Instagram likes and whatever else it is, but real data, and definitely not hunches from, oh, this person on your team said this, or your secretary said that. Oh, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do this. This person seems pretty interested in just saying this, and we trust that person on other projects, so let's just tell our marketing team to do what he said. No, the best way to do it is to really look at the data, and that's really what separates digital marketing from many other types. So this biotech startup that I mentioned earlier now is having not only 6-figure months, but it's actually had 6-figure days, right? So once they made it a priority and they handed it off to me, I pretty much was getting them a return of $36,000 per month, and that was just starting. And now it's 6-figure months, all right? 6-figure months. Think about that change, right? And here's what's crazy. It's the same advertising spend. All right. Think about the difference. You don't think an ad account can be run, 3 times better than it is, going from just here we set up something and it's sort of mediocre to having it really finely tuned? You don't think that's possible? Well, it happened with this company for sure. And the jewelry retailer, I cut their cost per conversion in half. They were bidding against different competitors. It's highly competitive space. And there were certain keywords that they just were trying to go after and they just couldn't do it, but they were trying anyway. And it just wasn't as effective as they really wanted. And by really fine tuning the account and, new advertising, new strategies, new campaigns, essentially doubling their marketing effectiveness for the same budget. All right. The same budget. And that's why I'm saying the importance of this, because it can drastically change the results. So you have to have the right system to generate these kinds of results. And again, what is the hard way? Well, you're struggling, you are juggling multiple responsibilities, you're sort of doing it in your part-time, you're offloading it to one of your office workers who's probably a really good person, and you're just hoping it goes well. I trust this person with lots of things. Here, could you look into this and, please do it for me because I'm too busy. And that is going to most likely limit you. And, but you're like, what is my other option? Overpaying a massive agency where it's, a couple hundred people and they spend most of their time and energy on their presentations. And it's just a lot of fancy titles that fly in and, will buy me dinner. And, I have to keep on paying them a huge amount. So I keep on getting these presentations and I hope it's going well. Could it be better? I don't know. But I'm paying them a lot of money. So money must equal quality. Or you're sort of in between and you're hiring an in-house marketer that needs a salary. They need $70,000, $80,000 for an actual professional. That could have gone into your advertising. So again, if you are, spending, a couple $100,000 a year, then you just spent half of it, right? You could have grown your business with that money. Not saying anything is wrong with hiring somebody, but the timing has to be right, and it has to be the right situation. And you shouldn't have to suffer to make this decision and lose half your advertising budget. So, what am I looking for? Well, I am looking for, just a few companies. I really am particular about the kinds of companies I work with, the ones that have a high potential for growth, and it's a long-term relationship. So only so many spots. I'm not trying to get dozens and dozens and dozens of people that are just ranging in whatever idea. It's established companies that are ready to take it to the next level. So they're already advertising. So if you're at the 5-figure a month range, then we should definitely talk. Or you're in the launch phase and you're about to put a lot into a huge startup launch. And you value results, real return on investment. That's something that a lot of people don't talk about anymore. They just talk about their Instagram likes and how big their audience is, and hey, my Facebook page has this many people, or my Google ads got a bunch more clicks this month. But Real results are about the profit and the revenue that's coming from it. And it takes action, and it takes a growth mindset. So if you're an action taking person and you're ready to really grow, then you are who I want to work with. So it's business owners that have a very specific solution. It genuinely helps people. I want to help your customers, and I want to help people that are helping the world. You have a good website and a sales process that can handle a large amount of leads and website traffic, and you actually love helping others, right? If you're just trying to take advantage of people and it's some sort of scammy thing, then, that's not who I want to work with long term. And, thankfully I haven't had to really worry about that, because generally the companies that make it to this phase, it weeds out a lot of, sort of just fly by night types of situations where they're just trying to get by, and then they sort of leave as soon as it's not looking good. And you're action oriented, and you're an actual decision maker. If you can't make the decision on this, then I don't know what to tell you. Then this needs to be shown to somebody who can make the decision. I'm trying to connect with people who are real decision makers in their business. So who is it not for? Well, it's people who haven't started a business yet, and they're just trying to think about a startup idea. I spoke at the San Diego Startup Week, and I gave a presentation on advertising for the mindset and the strategies and sort of beginning understanding of the technical applications of it across different networks. And a huge crowd comes up to me afterwards, and I'm just trying to answer everybody's questions. It was a packed ballroom in downtown San Diego, and people are asking me, well, what do you think about this business idea and this business idea? I was thinking about, making this or this cool little gadget. And, but what can I tell them? What can I really say? It's, well, I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if your audience is ready for that. I don't know if people are willing to pay for that. I don't know how hard you're willing to work to make this happen, and how much you're going to iterate on this idea, and how much you're going to improve your products. I don't know the future for your business. So it's definitely not for, people who are just, looking at different ideas and they're not prepared and they haven't actually launched anything. It's important for everybody to, start out like that, but this is for people further along. And you have to be serious about growing your business. Not just the information gathering, but hey, we need to grow, 6 figures to $1 million, this year. So let's go and let's take the strategies and action that we need to make this happen. So the better the fit, the better the results. I want this to be a win-win for everybody and a long-term relationship. So a personal, custom-tailored one-on-one strategy. This is a session between you and me where we take a look at your advertising account, and we look at your goals and what you're doing and who your customers are, and we really break it down. And we figure out what you want and how we can make it happen in the fastest amount of time possible, right? Results focused, not just vanity metrics, not just nice looking presentations or, handing it off to your niece's friend who needed a job in your office. I'm talking about a purely strategic and professional look at what is going on in your advertising. So time is a factor because I only have so much space. There's only so many companies I can work with, so many hours in the day, and I want it to be the right fit for everybody. So it's a very limited window of opportunity. So if this is what you're thinking, and if this is sounding like a right fit for you, then apply and let's talk. And either way, you'll get a strategy session and an audit, and we'll plan out. And whatever you decide on, hiring me or taking it to your team, that's fine. But at least you'll have some actionable strategies to go on and take your business to the next level, and at least have that mindset of real growth. So if you're ready for that, then I encourage you to click below and apply, and I will talk to you. And we will make a real strategy session together on what it will take to really boost and scale your company. Thanks.